I think the blank slate, everybody can get some mouthpiece to back them, and that might work a little better. And on the War Powers Act, I think if the War Powers Act, and they are talking like the War Powers Act is no longer an issue. They're talking like we're going to challenge this on the constitutional level. If we don't have a 30-day, 90-day
Wait,
operation.
do you want to explain it to people who don't know what this is before you talk about it?
Okay, so the War Powers Act is in a claim that all presidents have called unconstitutional, that says that after 90 days, Congress can stop a war. Basically, they could vote on it or something. I wish I had Sophie here. She is a constitutional expert, I would say. She talked about this yesterday. And Marco Rubio talked about yesterday. Every president has challenged it because it's unconstitutional. The commander in chief is the commander in chief. You can't.
Nope. Sketch, you got disconnected for a little bit. Is he disconnected for me or for you guys as well?
Yeah, it seems like he's disconnected.
Sketch. All right, I guess we have to go to the next person for now.
All right. The next person is Ryan, and he would like to talk about the outcomes of the conflict.
The outcomes of a U.S. Islamic Republic conflict?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on, let me see this. Okay. Give me a second. Sorry, really quickly. All right, let's go. Wait, is anyone talking?
Ryan, are you still here?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I want to start off saying I'm Iranian American, but obviously, like many of us, I want to see the regime fall. I'd love to go back to Iran one day. And then I just want to preface my question by giving just some background of what my thoughts are. So I do think one of the ways ideally that the regime could fall in the short term or in the longer term time frame is through arming the people of Iran, as you've discussed before, and the discussion around that is increasing now. And then having the people try to overthrow the government, and then I believe you would have to have special forces involved from Israel and the U.S. to go in, help secure the country for the crown prince possibly to return and help set up a transitional government. Obviously, this would be like an ideal situation for the people of Iran, but I think more realistically, what I think could happen, unfortunately, is that internally there's just going to continue to be this instability, this infighting amongst the mullahs and the people in charge, the IRGC leaders and Ghalibaf, all these different factions that are trying to gain power. I think ultimately they're never going to agree to give up all their enriched uranium. I don't think a deal will come out of it, because I think if they're smart, they would make the calculation that the only way they can guarantee staying in power and preventing outside forces like the US and Israel from overthrowing them is to work towards building a nuclear weapon. That's the one guarantee they need. So I don't think they would ever agree to that. And in such a case, I think that Israel and with the support of the US are going to continue to try to prevent the mullahs and these ideologues from strengthening and creating that nuclear weapon. I think in such a case, someone with military power, I know you've talked a lot about Vahidi, but you'd said that he doesn't have that kind of pull to have people to be willing to die for him, or whether it's someone from the office of the supreme leader. But I think in such a case, the person that will come up top, I don't think will be like another supreme leader. I think it would be basically someone who's able to garner the support of the IRGC and military power. And I think just the pure might and power will come up on top. And then we'll see like some variation of a military dictatorship in Iran. And then I think in such a case, like the Akhunds who have lost power would, and the structure of the regime that's now completely blown up, I think in the future, this would allow, once there's like some kind of quasi-military dictatorship, it would allow for in the future for change towards some other kind of government. I don't think it's possible to ever have a transition from like the Islamic Republic to some kind of government. It has to be more of a gradual transition. So I think personally, that's what I think the most likely outcome would be. And I just wanted to ask you, Armin, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so the Iranian people are not looking for a gradual transition, okay? Because it's true that we are already going through a transition of a theocracy to a military dictatorship. Like we have already had a slow moving coup of the boots versus the turbans going on for a while in Iran, right? The problem is that that transition will not lead to democracy, economic prosperity, and equal rights and freedom of expression and stuff like that. In fact, it might do the opposite, okay? Because a lot of the issues that we have with when it comes to our fundamental political and economic rights, we might get more social rights. Saudi Arabia, oh, here's some concerts, go drink booze, you don't need to wear the hijab anymore. We might get some of that social rights, but we're not going to get the main rights, which are the political rights and economic rights, because in fact we're going to lose more of that. Usually, sometimes when dictators give you social rights, is to basically take away your political and economic rights. And the reason why we're not going to get those from the IRGC is because of the economic and military structure that the IRGC has. The IRGC benefits from real falling. The IRGC benefits from isolationism because they don't have to compete. They control so many industries and they don't have to compete with foreign companies. The IRGC benefits from keeping the private sector of the market weak because then the industries that they control do not have to compete with with private companies, right? So it is not just like a lot of people look at it from only an Islamic perspective for why the Islamic Republic is very oppressive, but many people fail to look at the other side of it. It's an Islamic economic situation, and a lot of what the Islamic Republic, a lot of the things that causes the Islamic Republic to be as oppressive as it is, what it inherited not just from the mullahs but from the communists, right? Because the Islamic Revolution of 1979 was not just an Islamic revolution, it was an Islamic communist revolution. And a lot of those, maybe the ideals, many of the symbols and the values of communism did not survive, but the economic model, the command economic structure of the communism survived. And what the Islamic Republic inherited from the communists and the isolationism and the command economy, that's actually worse than what they got from the Islam part of the Islamic Revolution, right? So because that serves the IRGC economically, it has created a mafia-like situation where it doesn't make sense for them to let go of that power. So we're not going to see any gradual change to anything that would meaningfully free the Iranian people. They might give us some symbolic freedoms that would look interesting in the news, like girls dancing in the streets or concerts or singing. But again, more oppression, more people getting executed for challenging the IRGC, more shooting people in the streets, and economy will still be isolated, closed, and it's going to be a command economy under government control. Those are the things that we need. If we want Iranian people to be prosperous, that's the part that we need to get freed. And the IRGC is actually even worse than the mullahs when it comes to all of that, right? So gradual transition, if we're talking about going towards the military, is not going to work in our favor. We need full regime change. We need to continue fighting against the regime until it completely collapses. I do agree with you that the Islamic Republic is not going to, there are too many elements within the Islamic Republic that doesn't want to give up the enrichment of uranium. That's their main leverage. That's their main deterrent capability. So there are parts of the Islamic Republic that does want to give that away because they're desperate because of the blockade. But there are other people who don't want to give that away because of the reasons that you mentioned. I do agree that once the Islamic Republic falls, we're going to have an era of instability. I don't know how long that's going to last, but it might be short, it might be long, but that shouldn't discourage us for doing regime change, because every successful revolution goes through some instability period, maybe before it gets to full on stability and back to prosperity. It's worth paying that price. The price that you pay. Even the worst case scenario, which Iran is not going to be like, is Iraq. Iraq had 10 years of absolute chaos. And people thought, oh, maybe toppling Saddam was not good for Iraq. But even with Iraq, which is the worst case scenario, I would say if you look at Iraq right now, it was worth it. It was actually ended up being worth it. At least for Iraq. It was like Iraq is right now much better than it was under Saddam, even though things are still really shitty, but still much better than what it was under Saddam. And I think Iran is not going to be like Iraq. We are a lot more united. We're a lot more secular minded. We're a lot more in line with freedoms and classical liberal values, and interested in the same values that cause prosperity in Iran. And we have this sense of nationalism that bonds us together. So it's not going to be like Iraq. But even if it was 10 years of chaos, I think 10 years of chaos is worth getting rid of the Islamic Republic. The cost of having the Islamic Republic is way higher than 10 years of chaos. And then after that, starting to build after that 10 years of chaos. Even if that was the price, I think we would be happy to pay it, if it means the Islamic Republic will no longer be ruling over us. I also do agree that there are going to be regime supporters who are going to cause a lot of trouble for us. They're going to be our Hamas. They're going to be our ISIS. But again, Israel deals with Hamas. Israel deals with Hezbollah. So we're going to be doing the same thing. So once the Islamic Republic falls, and then we have a secular democracy, probably some of these pro-regime people are going to be our terrorists that are operating in our country. We're going to have our own ISIS, a Shia version of ISIS. We're going to have something like Hezbollah that is going to always be a security issue. But not only we're going to be dealing with them in the same way Israel is dealing with their own terrorists, we are going to be working with the Israelis in dealing with them, right? Because we share the same enemy. So the future state, the future government of Iran is going to be working. So our Artesh is going to be working with the IDF. Our Savak is going to be working with their Mossad in dealing with all of these terrorists in the region, because we share these enemies. And the main thing that is, even though these people are going to be a problem, the main thing that is going to be changing is that they finally going to be losing access to the ATM that is Iran, the oil and gas of Iran, because all of these groups, Hamas, Hezbollah, Kataeb, Hashd Shabi, Zainabiyun, Fatimiyun, IRGC, all of them, they all rely on the oil and gas. Their only reason why they could do all of the things that they do is because of the oil and gas that they have access to that is in Iran. So once Iran is free, yes, sure, these terrorists will still be in the region, but we will cut out their source of revenue, and it's going to be a lot easier to deal with them. They will always be there, but it's going to be a lot more easier to deal with them when they don't have that source of funding anymore.
All right, just because we're pretty much out of time, I'm going to give Sketch the chance to go back.
By the way,
to
for
what he was
people,
talking about.
before Sketch talks, I just want to say for people who are new here, like Ryan, and by the way, thank you for being here. I just want to say that once I leave, the conversation continues with people here. So as long as people want to stay here. So I'll leave, and there's not going to be any more time limits, and you guys could continue the conversation without me. Okay, so Sketch wanted to talk about what? And
War Powers Act.
Okay, hold on. I forgot. The Worst Power Act. You got disconnected. Samantha, I know you want to add to this, but you could talk about it after I leave because I'm already out of time.
I apologize. I had a power spike. You know, when the power goes down and up real quick, it turned off my computer in the middle of what I was telling. What I was talking about was Trump is doing to the IRGC what the IRGC has done to everyone. They lie and keep doing what they said they wouldn't do. Trump on June 20 said, you guys, Iran, you have 20 weeks to decide. And on June 21, he hit them with Midnight Hammer. Every time he tells them we're about to make a deal, we're going to negotiate, nothing. He's just taking the time he needs to hit them. We spoke about this earlier. So I understand that some people are like logically saying this is a terrible deal, this is a terrible memo, but I would like them to take that into consideration, that we are just doing to Iran what they have loved to do to everyone else for 47 years. And also that the War Powers Act, if we're taking away the limitations of the War Power Acts under the constitutionality, because that's
So,
the rhetoric coming out of the White House.
Before you talk about it, let me actually. So the War Powers Act of 1973 is a federal law intended to check the U.S. president's power to commit the United States to an armed conflict without the consent of Congress. And you're saying every president has argued that this act is unconstitutional. All right, so continue.
This is what Marco Rubio said we saw the video yesterday. If you remember, he said that all presidents have been against this because it's unconstitutional. We had a constitutional teacher, Sophie, come in here and talk a little bit yesterday about why it's unconstitutional, because that power doesn't rest in the Congress. That power rests in the administration. It's not in the legislature. They would not have anything to do with that. So if we take away the limitations, number one, of telling Congress exactly what we're doing, which would open everything we do up to a whole bunch of spies, and it would weaken our resolve by making us answer to political levers. And if we are removing limits, that changes very much, drastically, what we can do. As I understand it, we're striking right now, right? But we had just said we're pausing the operation. So we were pausing the operation not because we're going to try to make a deal, although we talked a lot about making a deal. We paused the operation and started bombing. You understand what I'm saying? So we're playing the war game. And in the war game, subterfuge and deceit is very important in it. And that's the game that's being actually played. I think that there's going to be a constitutional challenge, and Trump has made many constitutional challenges that other presidents have complained about, but he has actually taken all the way to the Supreme Court, and the War Powers Act may be one of them. He may just wait till they sue him and do what he wants, and you don't like it, sue me. And if they sue him, they're going to take weeks and months to take it up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court might say 9-0, we have nothing to do with this. This is not a power of Congress. This is not a power of the legislature. So that changes very much what would go on in the war. That's what I have to say about that.
Thank you and guys, this is a very interesting conversation, and after I leave, you guys could keep talking about it, and also what Samantha wanted to say, so we could talk about that as well. But let me just read this as well to add to what you're saying. So critics argue that the War Powers Act is unconstitutional because, one, executive authority, it allegedly infringes on the president's constitutional role as commander-in-chief, and then that's one. Two, separation of powers. So opponents claim Congress cannot use a statute to limit inherent executive powers or create a legislative veto over military movements. So those are the main arguments regarding why this is unconstitutional.